Something is happening inside the Cleveland Browns organization, and it's bigger than a rough start, a bad record, or a rookie learning the ropes. It's the kind of situation that doesn't show up on stat sheets, but explodes the moment a Hall of Famer decides to speak on it. And that's exactly what happened when Randy Moss, one of the most respected voices in football, looked straight into the camera and questioned whether everyone in Cleveland truly wants Shedeur Sanders to succeed. That wasn't criticism. That was a warning. Because Moss wasn't talking about missed throws or rookie mistakes. He was talking about decisions, calculated, crucial decisions that didn't add up. Decisions that made analysts stop mid-sentence, fans spiral into debates, and even players on the sideline react in ways that raised eyebrows. And once those moments hit social media, the conversation shifted from "How's the rookie progressing?" to "What exactly is going on inside that building?" The deeper you look, the stranger it gets. A franchise desperate for stability suddenly looks divided. A quarterback drafted to lead the future is being handled like a short-term placeholder. And every time Sanders makes a play that should swing momentum in his favor, something happens that yanks that momentum right back out of his hands. Some say it's protection. Others say it's hesitation. But the loudest voices online are convinced it's something far more complicated, maybe even intentional. And if you think this is just about a single play call or a conservative game plan, think again. Because the signs point to a pattern, and the pattern points to a problem the Browns can't afford to ignore. And what happened next made the entire NFL stop and ask a question Cleveland never wanted to hear. The spark that set this entire debate on fire didn't come from a missed read or a poorly timed throw. It came from a moment that should have been a highlight. One that should have lifted a rookie, quarterback, and an entire franchise starving for something to believe in. Late in his debut, Shedeur Sanders uncorked a deep ball that dropped perfectly into his receiver's hands. A throw so clean, it silenced the stadium for half a second. Even Myles Garrett, the face of the Browns, and a man who rarely shows emotion on offensive plays, practically exploded with excitement. It was the kind of moment that tells a locker room, this kid might actually be the one. And that's exactly why what happened next shocked everyone. Instead of letting Sanders stay on the field and finish the drive he created, the Browns coaching staff pulled him. No warning, no explanation, just a sudden shift into the Wildcat formation. Not once, not twice, but back-to-back plays that completely removed the rookie from the moment he earned. Fans couldn't believe it. Analysts paused mid-sentence, and Randy Moss, watching it unfold in real time, immediately asked the question no one wanted spoken out loud. Why take the ball out of your young quarterback's hands there? Coming from Moss, that wasn't casual commentary. It was an accusation wrapped in disbelief. The Browns scored, sure, but that wasn't the point. The issue wasn't the result, it was the message. Because in the NFL, moments like that matter. When a rookie drops a dime at the 2-yard line, you reward him. You let him punch it in. You let him feel the weight of the moment and the confidence it brings. But Cleveland did the opposite. They took the spotlight away from him at the exact second he'd earned it. Some fans argued it was strategy. Others said it was protection. But online, the conversation took a much sharper turn. People began questioning whether the decision was about football at all, or something deeper happening behind the scenes. And as the clip circulated and the reactions poured in, it became clear this wasn't an isolated incident. Coaching quirk. It felt like the first crack in a much larger story unfolding inside the Browns' walls. And the next clue arrived faster than anyone expected. The more people looked into that moment, the more it started to feel like the play call wasn't the real issue. The real problem seemed to be what it hinted at. Something deeper, something brewing inside the Browns organization that no one wanted to say out loud. And the longer the conversation continued, the more it felt like there were two different agendas operating under the same roof. Reports from around the league have quietly suggested for weeks that not everyone in Cleveland is on the same page about Shedeur Sanders. Some in the front office reportedly see him as a long-term project worth investing in. Others, according to league insiders, were never fully sold on drafting him in the first place. And then there are the whispers circulating among fans, radio hosts, and online forums, claiming that certain staff members might prefer hitting reset again in the 2026 draft. None of this is confirmed, of course, but the behavior on the sidelines has only added fuel to the speculation. Watch closely during games, and you'll notice little things. A position coach shaking his head as Sanders walks off the field. Veteran players staring down at tablets instead of hyping him up after a big throw. Analysts have pointed out that the body language feels off, almost like some people are waiting for Sanders to slip rather than helping him rise. And that's where the disconnect becomes impossible to ignore. Because when a team is truly unified behind its rookie quarterback, the energy is unmistakable. Look around the league. You see staffs building entire game plans to elevate their young guys. You see veterans pulling them aside after every drive, talking, adjusting, supporting. But in Cleveland, the vibe has been different. Some fans describe it as tension. Others call it uncertainty. A few even say it feels like resistance. Randy Moss sensed it immediately. He didn't just question the play call, he questioned the intent behind it. And when someone with his experience suggests that not everyone wants the kid to succeed, the football world listens. Because that kind of disconnect doesn't stay hidden for long. It eventually shows up in the execution, in the decisions, and in the opportunities a young quarterback either receives or gets denied. And the next moment that exposed this divide came during a play that should have changed the entire trajectory of Sanders' debut. If there was one moment that peeled back the curtain on what's really happening in Cleveland, it was the play that had the entire sideline buzzing. Shedeur Sanders stepped into the pocket, calm, patient, unfazed by the pressure closing in, and launched a throw that cut through the air like it was guided. It wasn't just a nice pass, it was the kind of throw that makes defensive coaches rethink their entire game plan. A textbook deep shot that only a handful of quarterbacks in the league can deliver with that level of touch. And the reaction said everything. Myles Garrett, the anchor of the franchise and the unspoken leader of the locker room, immediately jumped in celebration. This wasn't a polite clap or a nod of approval. This was a full-on emotional release, like he had finally seen something worth believing in on the offensive side of the ball. That kind of response from a superstar defender is rare. It carries weight. It tells you exactly what the players think when the kid is allowed to play his game. But that moment of electricity didn't last. Because right after that throw, instead of letting Sanders capitalize on the momentum he created, the coaching staff slammed the brakes again. They shifted away from him, away from the rhythm he'd just established, and called plays that put the ball anywhere except in his hands. Fans watched in disbelief as the offense walked away from the one thing that had finally sparked life into a struggling unit. This wasn't protection. This wasn't caution. At least, that's not how it looked to the people watching. Online discussions lit up instantly. Analysts paused their breakdowns, saying the same thing fans were shouting. Why pull away from what's working? Why take the ball away from a rookie who just proved he could make the toughest throw on the field? And layered beneath those questions was a deeper concern that someone in the building didn't want Sanders gaining too much control too quickly. Because confidence is contagious. Momentum spreads, and a play like that can shift an entire season. Yet Cleveland turned away from it, not by accident, but by choice. And that choice sparked a whole new conversation about why Sanders keeps getting held back and whether his personality is playing a bigger role in this saga than anyone wants to admit. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a rookie quarterback. He's a personality. And in the NFL, personality can be a blessing or a lightning rod, depending on who's watching. From the moment he arrived in Cleveland, he carried himself with a level of confidence most young quarterbacks don't show until they've won something big. The wristwatch flex, the declarations about being legendary, the calm swagger, it all made him stand out instantly. And while fans loved the energy, not everyone inside the league embraced it the same way. Some former players praised him for having that rare, unshakable belief. Others weren't so generous, calling it arrogance or saying he needed to earn it first. But the more people criticized his confidence, the more obvious it became that Sanders wasn't being judged by the same standards as other rookies. Veterans across the league regularly hype themselves up, talk big, problem. And the double standard didn't stop there. A small moment after his debut became a full-blown talking point, his post-game interview. Sanders didn't immediately shower the defense with praise, and that single decision was spun into a controversy. Analysts debated his maturity. Fans argued over his leadership. It became a storyline that overshadowed the fact that he later said he wanted to play better for his team. Meanwhile, veteran quarterbacks say "I" and "me" after games all the time and face zero backlash. That's when people started asking whether Sanders was simply being held to an impossible standard. Add in the online rumors, unverified but persistent, claiming that some veterans weren't thrilled about the attention he brought from the moment he stepped into the building. Nothing confirmed, but enough noise to make people wonder whether the friction around him wasn't just about football. Because here's the truth, no one wants to say out loud. Confidence makes some people uncomfortable. And when a rookie enters the league with star-level poise, some interpret it as entitlement rather than preparation. Sanders didn't walk into Cleveland trying to be a background player. He walked in trying to elevate the entire franchise. But instead of embracing that spark, parts of the organization seemed unsure of how to handle it. And that uncertainty became even more obvious once the coaching decisions started to stack up. Decisions that blurred the line between protecting a young quarterback and limiting one. If the on-field decisions raised eyebrows, the post-game reaction turned those eyebrows into full-blown suspicion. Because what should have been a normal rookie interview somehow became the biggest storyline of the week. Shedeur Sanders walked up to the podium calm, composed, and honest about his performance. He talked about wanting to execute better, wanting to grow, wanting to help the team. Nothing dramatic, nothing disrespectful. But the moment he didn't immediately shower the defense with praise, the media pounced. Clips were chopped up, posted online, and spun into narratives about leadership and maturity. Commentators accused him of being too focused on himself. Fans debated whether he was team first enough. It became a snowball that rolled far bigger than the actual quote deserved. And the wildest part? Later in the interview, Sanders did credit his teammates, but by then, the damage was done. The viral moment had already rewritten the storyline. Meanwhile, veteran quarterbacks across the league routinely talk about their own play without getting dragged into a week-long lecture about humility. They critique themselves. They speak candidly. They even show frustration at times. No one turns it into a character investigation. But with Sanders, the scrutiny was immediate and intense. This is where the media spin became impossible to ignore. Reports surfaced, unverified but widely discussed, that some people within the organization weren't thrilled with how the interview sounded. A few anonymous voices suggested it rubbed certain veterans the wrong way. Fans online started arguing about locker room chemistry, even though no player publicly expressed an issue. It was all speculation layered on top of speculation. Yet somehow it shaped the entire conversation around him. The result? A moment that should have been about growth turned into a referendum on his personality. And once the narrative shifts, it becomes harder for a young quarterback to control it. Sanders' confidence, which once felt refreshing, was suddenly painted as a risk. His honesty was framed as selfishness. His composure was mistaken for detachment. But the biggest problem was still the football side of things. Because if there was any doubt about how people viewed him, the coaching decisions only magnified it, creating a new question that no one could ignore. Were the Browns actually trying to protect their rookie, or quietly limiting him in ways that didn't make sense? And the answer became even more complicated once you looked at how the game plan unfolded. From the moment Sanders took his first snap, it was obvious the Browns' game plan was built around caution. Screens, swing passes, quick throws behind the line, everything designed to keep the ball out of danger. On paper, that sounds reasonable. He's a rookie. The offensive line is banged up, and facing a top-tier pass rusher is no easy assignment. But as the game unfolded, that cautious strategy started to look less like protection and more like hesitation. Because conservative football only makes sense when it benefits the quarterback. What Cleveland did felt like the exact opposite. Every time Sanders started to find a rhythm, the play calling shifted backward. Drives that began with promise would suddenly stall behind predictable looks. Moments where he showed poise and confidence were followed by sequences that completely removed him from the equation. And fans began asking the question no coaching staff likes to hear. If you don't trust him to run the offense, why start him at all? Rumors online began circulating that the coaches were under pressure to avoid another quarterback controversy. Some speculated that giving Sanders too much freedom too early could make things messy for the front office, especially with 2 first-round picks sitting in the 2026 draft. Nothing verified, but the timing made people suspicious. Because when a quarterback flashes big playability, the natural next step is to build on it, not shrink the playbook around him. Other rookie quarterbacks around the league were being allowed to struggle, grow, and make mistakes. Jackson Dart was learning on the field. Bo Nix was putting together steady improvement, week after week. Their teams embraced the process. Cleveland, meanwhile, looked like it was coaching not to lose, instead of coaching to develop. And that's where the frustration boiled over. It's one thing to protect a young quarterback. It's another to suffocate his potential. Sanders didn't look overwhelmed. He didn't look lost. He didn't look like someone who needed to be hidden behind handoffs and screens. He looked ready to test himself in real NFL situations. Yet every time that door opened, the staff seemed determined to close it. The message was mixed. The actions were confusing. And the result was a game plan that left everyone wondering what the Browns truly wanted from their rookie. Because if the organization believes he's their future, their approach should reflect that. But everything about this strategy hinted at a deeper, long-standing issue, one the Browns have struggled with for years. And that history loomed over everything that unfolded next. What makes this situation even more unsettling is that Cleveland has lived this story many times before. The Browns' quarterback history reads like a cautionary tale. Names with promise, names with hype, names who arrived with hope only to be swallowed by instability, poor timing, or organizational chaos. And that history isn't ancient. It's recent, it's painful, and it hangs over every decision the franchise makes. So when fans see Shedeur Sanders being handled with extreme caution, they don't just see a rookie learning the ropes. They see the ghosts of the past resurfacing. Cleveland has drafted quarterbacks only to rotate them out of starting roles within weeks. They've committed to development only to abandon it the moment things get rocky. And now, with reports suggesting the front office is keeping an eye on the 2026 draft, a class rumored to include several top-tier prospects, people are starting to question whether Sanders is being viewed as a long-term solution or simply a placeholder. None of this is confirmed, but the speculation feels louder because the patterns feel familiar. Even analysts have pointed out that Sanders' raw talent isn't the problem. His arm strength, his touch on deep throws, his ability to stay poised under pressure. Those traits don't come around often. They're rare. They're the exact things franchises spend decades trying to find. Yet somehow, instead of leaning into that potential, Cleveland's approach looks cautious to the point of contradiction. Fans aren't blind to it. They've watched this organization chase new beginnings again and again without committing to the foundation required to make any of them work. And that's why Sanders' situation feels so fragile. Not because he lacks talent, but because the franchise has struggled to build around talented quarterbacks for years. Randy Moss's comments hit so hard because they tapped into that fear. When he said it looked like not everyone wanted Sanders to succeed, it echoed a concern fans already had in the back of their minds. What if the Browns still don't know how to develop their future? The team's identity is at a crossroads. They can either break the cycle or fall right back into the same pattern that has defined them for decades. And that brought us to the only question that mattered as the dust settled on Sanders' debut. A question the entire league is now watching Cleveland struggle to answer. When the final whistle blew on Shedeur Sanders' debut, the scoreboard didn't tell the real story. The stat sheet didn't capture it. Even the highlight reel missed the undercurrent running through every snap he took. Because what unfolded in Cleveland wasn't just a rookie quarterback's first chapter. It was a glimpse into a franchise wrestling with its own identity. The biggest question wasn't whether Sanders played well. It wasn't whether he made the right reads or protected the football. The real question, the one Randy Moss forced into the spotlight, was whether the Browns actually want him to succeed. And once that question was asked, it became impossible to ignore the signs pointing in opposite directions. On one hand, you have a young quarterback showing rare talent, a locker room reacting to his big moments, and flashes of exactly what the franchise claims to be searching for. On the other hand, you have decisions that pull him away from momentum, a game plan that shrinks the field around him, and a pattern of caution that feels less like guidance and more like resistance. It's a contradiction Cleveland can't hide from. Every organization says they want their rookie quarterback to grow, but growth takes trust. It takes commitment. It takes the willingness to let a young player experience the responsibility of leading a team, even when mistakes are possible. Especially when mistakes are possible. And that's where the Browns feel stuck, caught between protecting their investment and fearing what happens if they let him fully take control. The truth is, this moment will shape far more than Sanders' development. It will shape the future of the franchise itself. Because if Cleveland handles this the same way they've handled so many quarterback situations before, history will repeat itself. Fans know it, analysts know it, and judging by his tone, Randy Moss definitely knows it. But if they break the pattern, if they trust the kid, build around him, and give him the runway he deserves, this could be the moment everything finally turns. The moment the Browns stop searching for a savior and start supporting the one they already have. Now the entire league is watching to see which path Cleveland chooses. Because the clock is ticking, the pressure is rising, and the future of the franchise is standing alone. Right there under center, waiting for the organization to decide whether they're truly behind him or just hoping someone else will solve the problem for them. Only Cleveland can answer that. And the answer will define everything that comes next.